They told me I'd never be successful without their support. But life has a way of proving doubters wrong. What they didn't know was that getting abandoned at that airport would become the catalyst for my empire. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to see more incredible stories of triumph against all odds. The terminal at JFK buzzed with activity as I stood there, watching the departing flight to Los Angeles on the monitor. My family was on that plane. Without me. The weight of my carry-on seemed to increase with each passing second as reality sank in. I, Valerie Bennett, had just been abandoned at one of the busiest airports in the world. It wasn't an accident. 3 hours earlier, we'd had the argument that would change the trajectory of my life forever. My father's face had turned that particular shade of crimson I'd grown to fear over the years. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you," he had said, his voice carrying across the pre-security area where travelers milled about, some casting curious glances our way. "This tech startup nonsense is just another one of your phases. You're 28 years old, Valerie. It's time to grow up and join the family business." My mother stood silently beside him, her disappointment evident in her tight-lipped expression. My younger brother Ryan looked uncomfortable, but remained loyal to our parents' vision, as always. "My app has genuine potential," I'd argued. "I've secured an investor meeting in New York. This could be huge." "We're not delaying our vacation for your latest pipe dream," my father declared with finality. "Either come with us to the family reunion in California or stay behind. But if you choose your fantasy over your family, don't expect our support when it inevitably fails." The choice seemed impossible in that moment. The investor meeting was the opportunity I'd been working toward for 2 years. My app, SecureSwap, a platform that facilitated secure barter exchanges between businesses with verified credentials, had already gained traction in beta testing. This investor could provide the capital to scale it nationally. "I'm staying," I had said, my voice steadier than my nerves. What I hadn't expected was the coldness that followed. They checked their bags, went through security, and boarded their flight without a backward glance. No goodbye, no good luck, just silence, and the unspoken message that I had chosen wrong. Now I stood alone, watching the flight status change from boarding to departed. I took a deep breath and called an Uber to take me to the modest Airbnb I'd booked in Brooklyn. Tomorrow was my investor meeting, and I needed to prepare. As the car navigated through New York's congested streets, I scrolled through my presentation one more time, making minor adjustments. The evening sky turned a deep indigo as we crossed the bridge, the Manhattan skyline glittering against it like a constellation of earthbound stars. My Airbnb was a small studio apartment in a converted brownstone. It was clean, but sparse. A bed, a desk, a mini kitchen, and a bathroom. Perfect for my needs and my limited budget. I'd bet everything on this trip, including the last of my savings. That night, I rehearsed my pitch until the words flowed naturally. SecureSwap wasn't just a business idea to me. It was the culmination of years observing how small businesses struggled to obtain services they needed due to cash flow issues. My platform would allow them to barter their expertise and resources in a secure, verified environment. Sleep came fitfully as doubts crept in. What if my father was right? What if this was just another impulsive decision that would lead nowhere? By morning, dark circles shadowed my eyes, but determination had replaced doubt. I dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy blue blazer over a white blouse, paired with tailored pants and sensible heels. The investment firm, Horizont Capital, occupied 3 floors of a sleek skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. I arrived 30 minutes early, sat in the lobby cafe with a coffee I couldn't taste, and reviewed my notes one final time. "Ms. Bennett," a receptionist appeared at my table. "Mr. Donovan will see you now." James Donovan, the founding partner of Horizont Capital, was known for his keen eye for promising startups and his brutally direct approach. He was shorter than I expected, with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in monetary terms. "You have 15 minutes, he said without preamble as I entered his corner office. "Impress me." The next quarter hour was a blur of slides, projections, and answers to his rapid-fire questions. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me with an unreadable expression. "Your concept is solid," he finally said, "but your valuation is off, and your growth strategy needs work." My heart sank. This was a polite rejection. "However," he continued, "I see potential. Not just in the platform, but in you. You've identified a real problem and created a viable solution. That's rarer than you might think." He slid a business card across his desk. "Call my assistant and set up another meeting for next week. Bring a revised business plan with the adjustments we discussed. If that checks out, we might have something to talk about." It wasn't the immediate success I'd hoped for, but it was far from failure. As I left the building, a mixture of relief and renewed determination washed over me. I had a foot in the door. Now I just needed to push it open wider. I spent the next week working 18-hour days, refining my business plan, adjusting financial projections, and strengthening my growth strategy. I barely left my Airbnb except to grab coffee and quick meals. My laptop became an extension of myself, and my phone remained ominously silent. No calls from my family. No texts asking how the meeting went. Their silence hurt more than their words ever had, but it also fueled my resolve. I would succeed, not despite them, but because their doubt had forced me to believe in myself more fiercely than ever before. When I returned to Horizon Capital the following week, James Donovan wasn't alone. 4 other partners sat around the conference table, each with a copy of my revised business plan. "Ms. Bennett," Donovan began, "we've reviewed your revisions. They show promise." For the next hour, we dissected every aspect of SecureSwap. Their questions were incisive, sometimes borderline hostile, but I held my ground. I knew my product inside and out. I understood my target market. I had answers. As the meeting concluded, Donovan exchanged glances with his partners. "We'd like to offer you seed funding," he announced. $3 million for a 20% stake in SecureSwap. The number hit me like a physical force. $3 million. It was more than I'd dared hope for, though less than I'd optimistically projected in my best-case scenarios. "I appreciate the offer," I heard myself say, "but SecureSwap's potential value is significantly higher. I'm willing to accept the investment at 15% equity." A bold counteroffer, perhaps too bold. The room fell silent, and I wondered if I'd just blown my only chance. Then Donovan smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. 18%, and we provide office space in our incubator program for the first year, plus access to our network of advisors. "Deal," I said, extending my hand. That handshake changed everything. Within days, the funding was secured, contracts were signed, and SecureSwap had official backing from one of the most respected venture capital firms in New York. I extended my Airbnb stay and began the process of relocating to New York permanently. The incubator space was a godsend. A modern, fully equipped office with meeting rooms, technical support, and most importantly, proximity to other startups and potential mentors. My phone remained silent. I'd sent a brief text to my family group chat. Secured major investment for SecureSwap, moving to New York. No one had responded. Their silence stung, but I couldn't allow it to distract me. I had a company to build. The first 6 months were a whirlwind of hiring, product development, and strategic planning. I assembled a small but talented team. A chief technology officer who believed in the platform enough to take equity over a higher salary, a marketing director with experience in the B2B space, and a handful of developers who worked tirelessly to refine the user experience. Our incubator space quickly became too small as we expanded to 15 employees. James Donovan, now a mentor as well as an investor, helped us secure larger offices in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. The space had character, exposed brick walls, massive windows, and an energy that matched our growing company's vibe. SecureSwap officially launched 4 months after securing funding. The platform allowed businesses to list their services, products, and excess inventory for barter with other verified businesses. Our revenue came from transaction fees and premium membership features. It was a simple model, but one that filled a genuine need in the market. The response exceeded our projections. Small businesses, particularly in creative industries and professional services, flocked to the platform. Our user base grew exponentially, and with it, our transaction volume. By month 5, we were processing over $3 million in barter exchanges weekly. Success brought new challenges. Competitors began to emerge, attempting to copy our model. Technical issues sometimes disrupted the platform. Growth required additional funding rounds. Each problem demanded solutions, decisions, and leadership. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. My apartment, a one-bedroom in Brooklyn that I rarely saw in daylight, became little more than a place to shower and occasionally sleep. My social life was non-existent. My diet consisted mainly of delivery food consumed at my desk. But SecureSwap was thriving, and that made every sacrifice worthwhile. During a rare, quiet Sunday morning at my apartment, as I sipped coffee and reviewed our latest performance metrics, my phone rang. The screen displayed a number I didn't recognize. "Valerie Bennett speaking," I answered, assuming it was a work call. "Ms. Bennett, this is Sandra Winters from Forbes magazine." The woman's voice was professional but warm. "I'm reaching out because we're considering featuring you in our annual 30 Under 30 issue." I nearly spilled my coffee. Forbes, the business publication. The one my father had subscribed to for as long as I could remember. I'm honored," I managed to say. "We've been following SecureSwap's growth, and your story is compelling," Sandra continued. "Would you be available for an interview and photo shoot next week?" The interview took place at our offices. Sandra was thorough, asking about everything from my business model to my personal journey. I found myself sharing more than I'd intended about my family's lack of support, the airport abandonment, and how that moment had crystallized my determination. "So your family hasn't seen your success?" Sandra asked, her pen poised over her notebook. "We haven't spoken since I stayed in New York," I admitted. "They're back in Boston." I assume they're aware of SecureSwap's growth. It's been covered in several business publications, but they haven't reached out. The photo shoot followed the interview. A professional photographer posed me in various locations around our office. At my desk, in front of our logo wall, standing by the windows overlooking the Brooklyn skyline. It felt surreal, being treated like someone whose image was worth capturing for a national publication. "When will the issue be published?" I asked Sandra as we wrapped up. "Next month," she replied. "And Valerie? Based on our conversation and what I've learned about SecureSwap, I think you might be featured more prominently than just the 30 Under 30 list." I didn't grasp her meaning until 3 weeks later, when my assistant placed a copy of the newest Forbes issue on my desk. There I was, on the cover, standing confidently in front of SecureSwap's logo wall, arms crossed, expression determined. The headline read, "Valerie Bennett, the youngest female CEO revolutionizing business barter." The accompanying article detailed SecureSwap's meteoric rise and my journey from being left at JFK to building a company valued at over $50 million in less than a year. It painted me as a visionary who had recognized an untapped market and created an elegant solution that was changing how small businesses operated. The article went viral. Suddenly, I was fielding interview requests from business podcasts, television shows, and other publications. SecureSwap's user registration numbers spiked dramatically. Investors began calling, interested in our next funding round. In the midst of this whirlwind, an email arrived from an address I recognized immediately. My mother's. The subject line read simply, "We saw." The body of the email was brief. "Valerie, your father and I saw the Forbes cover. We had no idea SecureSwap had grown so significantly. Congratulations on your success. We would like to speak with you when you have time. Mom." No apology. No acknowledgement of how they had treated me. Just a recognition of my success and a request to talk. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to ignore the email completely, to let them feel a fraction of the abandonment I had experienced. Another part yearned for reconciliation, for my family to be part of my life again, to share in my success. Before I could decide how to respond, my phone rang with a call from a number I hadn't seen in nearly a year. My father's. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering, each ring echoing the months of silence between us. "Hello, Dad," I said, keeping my voice neutral despite the storm of emotions inside me. "Valerie." His voice sounded older somehow, less certain than I remembered. We saw the magazine. The Forbes cover. Yes, Mom emailed me." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. I could almost see him in his study in our Boston home, struggling with words that didn't come easily to William Bennett, the self-made construction company owner who had never learned how to admit he was wrong. "You've done well for yourself," he finally said. "Very well. The article says SecureSwap is valued at over $50 million. Closer to $60 million after our latest funding round," I replied, unable to keep a hint of pride from my voice. Another pause. "We'd like to see you," he said. "Your mother and I, and Ryan, we're coming to New York next weekend for a charity event. Perhaps we could meet for dinner?" I considered declining. Part of me wanted them to work harder for my forgiveness. But what would that accomplish? More distance, more silence, more lost time. "Saturday evening works for me," I said. "There's a restaurant near my office in Brooklyn. I'll text you the details." After we disconnected, I sat motionless at my desk, staring out at the Brooklyn skyline as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the buildings. A year ago, I had stood alone at JFK, watching my family leave without a backward glance. Now they wanted to reconnect, but only after my success had been splashed across the cover of Forbes. Was their interest genuine? Or was it about the connections and prestige my new position might bring? My father's construction company had always relied on networking and relationships. Having a daughter featured in Forbes could open doors previously closed to him. I pushed the cynical thoughts aside. Whatever their motives, this dinner would be an opportunity to reclaim some control in our relationship. I was no longer the desperate daughter seeking approval. I was Valerie Bennett, CEO of SecureSwap, and I would meet them as an equal. The restaurant I chose was a perfect reflection of my new life. An upscale farm-to-table establishment housed in a renovated warehouse space, not unlike our office building. It was elegant without being stuffy, innovative without being pretentious. I arrived 15 minutes early and secured a corner table that offered some privacy while still showcasing the restaurant's industrial chic aesthetic. The hostess recognized me from the Forbes coverage and treated me with a deference that still felt foreign. They arrived exactly on time, punctuality being one of my father's non-negotiable values. My mother entered first, elegant as always in a navy blue dress that likely cost more than my first month's rent in Brooklyn. My father followed, his imposing frame somehow diminished from my memory, his hair grayer than I remembered. Ryan, my younger brother, brought up the rear, looking uncomfortable in a suit that seemed to constrain more than clothe him. I stood as they approached, unsure of the appropriate greeting after such a prolonged estrangement. My mother solved the dilemma by stepping forward and embracing me. The familiar scent of her perfume. Chanel No. 5, unchanged since my childhood, triggered a cascade of memories. "You look wonderful," she said, stepping back to examine me. "New York agrees with you." "Success agrees with her," my father corrected, extending his hand for a formal handshake before apparently thinking better of it and awkwardly pulling me into a brief hug. Ryan hung back, offering a small wave. "Hey, Val. Congrats on being a big shot now." We settled into our seats, and a waiter immediately appeared with menus and a wine list. My father, always the patriarch, reached for the wine list first, but I gently intercepted it. "I've become quite familiar with their selection," I said. "They have an excellent Barolo that I think you'd enjoy, Dad." A flicker of surprise crossed his face before he nodded, ceding the decision to me. It was a small thing, but symbolically significant, a subtle shift in our dynamic. The first course arrived amid polite conversation about the restaurant, the neighborhood, and the unseasonably warm autumn weather. We carefully avoided any topics of substance until the main course was served, and my father cleared his throat in the way he always did before addressing something important. "Your company, SecureSwap," he began. "The Forbes article explained the concept, but I'd like to hear it from you. How exactly does it work?" I explained the platform in simple terms, watching understanding dawn on his face as he recognized the business logic behind it. My father had always respected practical solutions to real problems, and despite his initial dismissal, SecureSwap was exactly that. "And you came up with this entirely on your own?" he asked, a note of genuine curiosity in his voice. "The concept evolved over time," I replied. "I saw how many of your subcontractors struggled with cash flow but had valuable skills and resources that went unutilized. The idea grew from there." "Impressive," he acknowledged, cutting a piece of his steak with surgical precision. "Very impressive." My mother, always more perceptive about emotional undercurrents, gently steered the conversation toward reconciliation. "We've missed you, Valerie," she said. "The family reunion wasn't the same without you." "I've been busy," I replied, the understatement of the year hanging between us. "We know," she continued, "and we're proud of what you've accomplished. But we regret how things were left between us. At the airport." My father set down his fork and knife, a gesture that signaled his full attention. "What your mother is trying to say is that we were wrong." The words hung in the air, unprecedented in my experience. William Bennett did not admit mistakes. "We were wrong to dismiss your vision," he continued. "Wrong to issue that ultimatum, and wrong to leave you at the airport. It was not our finest moment as parents." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I had prepared for defensiveness, for qualified apologies, for attempts to share the blame. I hadn't prepared for this straightforward admission. "Why now?" I asked, the question that had been nagging at me since their first contact. "Is it because of Forbes? Because SecureSwap is successful? Would you have reached out if I had failed?" My father looked genuinely pained by the questions. "I don't know," he admitted after a long pause. "I'd like to think we would have, but I can't say for certain. Pride is a difficult thing to overcome. The magazine made us realize how much we'd missed," my mother added. "Not just your success, but you, our daughter." Ryan, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. "They've been keeping tabs on you, you know. Dad has a Google alert set up for your name and SecureSwap. He's followed every article, every mention. He has a folder on his computer." My father shot him a look of betrayal but didn't deny it. "Is that true?" I asked. "Yes," he admitted. "I couldn't bring myself to contact you directly, but I needed to know you were okay. That you were succeeding or failing on your own terms." The revelation shifted something inside me. They hadn't forgotten me or dismissed me entirely. In their own flawed way, they had remained connected to my journey, even if from a distance. Dessert arrived. A deconstructed apple tart that momentarily diverted our attention from the emotional weight of our conversation. As we shared the dessert, our talk turned toward the future. "We'd like to be part of your life again," my mother said. "If you'll have us. No conditions this time." "We've learned our lesson," my father added with a self-deprecating smile that seemed foreign on his usually serious face. "The hard way, as usual for the Bennetts." I considered their offer, weighing the past hurt against the possibility of a renewed relationship. Family was complicated, mine perhaps more than most, but it was still family. "I'd like that," I finally said, "but things have to be different. I'm not the same person who stood in that airport a year ago." "None of us are," my father acknowledged. "That's probably for the best." As the evening wound down and we prepared to part ways, my father hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small box. "This was meant to be a birthday gift last month," he explained, pushing it across the table. "We didn't know where to send it then." Inside the box was a vintage Cartier watch, elegant and understated. I recognized it immediately as my grandmother's, a family heirloom that had always been intended for me someday. "She built her own business too," my father said quietly, "back when women weren't supposed to do such things. She would have been proud of you, as we are. The watch felt heavy with significance as I fastened it around my wrist. A connection to the past, worn while facing forward into the future. The reconciliation with my family added an unexpected dimension to my life. It didn't solve everything. Years of complicated dynamics couldn't be resolved in a single dinner, but it opened a door that had been firmly closed. In the months that followed, we established a new rhythm: Sunday phone calls, occasional visits. They came to New York for SecureSwap's first anniversary celebration, and I returned to Boston for Thanksgiving. My father and I developed a habit of sending each other articles about business innovations, a small but meaningful way of connecting through shared interests. Meanwhile, SecureSwap continued its upward trajectory. Our user base expanded internationally, requiring us to navigate the complexities of cross-border barter exchanges and varying regulatory environments. We grew to over 70 employees and moved to even larger offices in Manhattan's Flatiron District, a space that reflected our evolution from scrappy startup to established fintech player. 1 year and 3 months after being left at JFK, I found myself standing in a sleek conference room in our new headquarters, facing the largest challenge of my career thus far. Barter Global, a European competitor with significant backing from several major banks, had approached us with an acquisition offer. James Donovan and the other investors from Horizont Capital sat across from me, along with our executive team and attorneys from both sides. The number on the table was staggering: $350 million. "It's an exceptional offer," James said during a break in the negotiations. "No one would fault you for accepting it. You'd walk away with enough money to never work another day in your life, and you could start something new if you wanted." It was tempting. The acquisition would make me wealthy beyond anything I had imagined when I stood alone in that airport. It would validate every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every doubt I had overcome. But as I looked around at the company I had built from nothing, the people who had believed in my vision, the platform that was genuinely helping businesses thrive, I knew that SecureSwap's story wasn't finished. Not yet. "We're declining the offer," I announced when the meeting reconvened. "SecureSwap isn't for sale." The Barter Global representatives were visibly shocked. Their CEO, a polished Swiss banker named Martin Keller, leaned forward. "Ms. Bennett, perhaps you don't understand the generosity of our offer. $350 million is significantly above market valuation for a company with your current revenue." "I understand perfectly," I replied, "and I appreciate the validation your offer represents. But we believe SecureSwap's potential value far exceeds your current offer. We're not looking to be acquired. We're looking to grow." After the Barter Global team departed, James lingered behind. "Bold move," he commented. "Risky, but bold." "Do you think I made a mistake?" I asked. He considered this for a moment. "No, I think you made a CEO decision. You're playing the long game, and that's what builds truly transformative companies." That evening, I called my father to tell him about the offer I had turned down. There was a time when such a decision would have triggered a lecture about practical business sense and missed opportunities. Instead, he surprised me. "You built it," he said simply. "You get to decide its worth and its future. That's the privilege and the burden of creating something that matters." 2 weeks later, we launched SecureSwap Enterprise, a version of our platform designed specifically for larger corporations with complex supply chains and resource allocation needs. The launch exceeded our most optimistic projections, with 5 Fortune 500 companies signing on within the first month. Our valuation doubled. The acquisition offer, which had seemed generous at the time, now looked like an attempt to acquire us before our true value was recognized by the market. On a crisp autumn morning, almost exactly 2 years after being left at JFK Airport, I stood at the window of my corner office, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. My grandmother's watch gleamed on my wrist, a connection to my past and a reminder of how far I had come. My assistant knocked on the door, interrupting my reflection. "Your parents are here," she announced, "and the car is ready to take you to the airport whenever you're ready." I smiled at the irony. Today, my parents were accompanying me to JFK. where we would board a flight to London for SecureSwap's European expansion launch. My father had offered valuable insights on international business operations, and my mother had connections in London's business community that had helped smooth our entry into the market. "Tell them I'll be right out," I replied. Before leaving my office, I took one final look at the framed Forbes cover on my wall, a reminder not just of success, but of that pivotal moment when being left behind had propelled me forward. Sometimes, I reflected, the most painful rejections lead us exactly where we need to go. My family had left me at the airport, never imagining that their abandonment would be the catalyst for everything that followed. Life had a way of creating opportunities from what initially seemed like failure. I closed my office door and went to meet my parents, ready for the next chapter of a journey that had begun when I stood alone watching a departure board, unaware that I was actually at the starting line of something extraordinary. In the end, being left behind had given me the freedom to move forward on my own terms, and that had made all the difference.